The first thing she said to me was, "No one wants to date me." Not as a joke. Not as a test. She said it like someone reading a sentence they'd already memorized from too many lonely nights. I laughed at first, the wrong kind of laugh, the nervous one people use when they don't know how close they are to breaking something fragile. Then she lifted her shirt, not dramatically, not seductively, but carefully, like she was bracing for impact, and in that second I realized this wasn't a story about attraction at all. It was about whether I was going to disappear like everyone else. If you've ever wondered what you'd do when someone hands you their deepest fear without warning, stay right here, because what happened next changed both of us in ways neither of us expected. She was sitting across from me on the edge of the couch, knees tucked in, fingers twisting the hem of her shirt as if she could unravel the moment and start again. Her name was Amina, and we'd met through a mutual friend who thought we'd balance each other out, whatever that meant. We'd only been talking for a few weeks, mostly late-night messages about music, childhood memories, and the kind of dreams people only admit when the world is quiet. I liked her laugh. I liked how she listened. I didn't know yet how much courage it took for her to sit there and let me see the truth she thought made her unlovable. When she lifted her shirt, I saw scars. Not the kind you get from clumsiness or childhood accidents, but the kind that come from survival. A long, uneven line across her abdomen. Smaller marks near her ribs. Evidence of surgeries, of hospital rooms, of battles she never asked for. She dropped the fabric almost immediately, her face flushing, eyes fixed on the floor. "This is why," she said softly. "People get close, then they imagine a future, and then they imagine this. And they leave." I didn't say anything right away. Not because I was shocked, but because I was angry, not at her, but at the world that had taught her to apologize for being alive. She kept talking, words spilling out like she'd been holding her breath for years. How one guy ghosted her after she told him. How another said he wasn't ready for something complicated. How she'd started warning people early, as if she were a broken product that needed a disclaimer. I wanted to say something perfect. Something cinematic. But all that came out was the truth. "I'm not going anywhere." The room went quiet. She looked up at me, really looked, like she was searching for the catch. "You don't have to say that," she replied. "You don't even know me that well." I shrugged. "I know enough to know you're more than what hurt you." That was the moment the story really began, not with romance, but with a choice. Because staying is easy in words. It's much harder in real life, when the weight of someone else's fear starts pressing against your own. And if you think this was the part where everything magically got better, don't look away yet. The real test came after, when love stopped being an idea and started becoming work. The weeks that followed were quieter, heavier in some ways. We didn't talk about the scars much, but they were always there, like a third presence in the room. Amina pulled back without realizing it, canceling plans, replying late, building walls she'd perfected over years of disappointment. I could feel her waiting for me to get tired, to prove her right. And I'll be honest, there were moments I was scared. Not of her body, but of the responsibility that comes with seeing someone so clearly. When you know someone's wounds, your actions matter more. One night, after she'd gone distant for days, I finally asked what was wrong. She hesitated, then said, "I don't want you to wake up one day and realize you signed up for something you didn't want." That sentence hit harder than any scar ever could. I told her fear doesn't mean stop, it means slow down. I told her everyone carries something, even if it's invisible. Some people hide it behind confidence. Some behind humor. Hers just happened to be written on her skin. We started rebuilding, not as a grand love story, but as two imperfect people choosing honesty over escape. She told me about the illness she'd fought in her early 20s, how it stole years she thought she'd have. I told her about my own failures, the relationships I'd walked away from because it was easier than staying. Little by little, the balance shifted. She stopped warning me. I stopped feeling like I had to prove anything. We just showed up. There was a moment months later that I still think about. We were standing in front of a mirror, getting ready to go out. She caught her reflection and froze, hands hovering near her shirt like they used to. This time, instead of turning away, she took a breath and stood taller. "I used to think this made me less," she said. "Now I think it means I survived." I smiled and said, "That's exactly how I see you. If you're waiting for a dramatic ending, here it is. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden breakup. No fairy tale transformation. Just two people learning that love isn't about perfection, it's about presence." Amina didn't become fearless overnight. I didn't become a hero. But every day we chose not to disappear. So if you're the person who believes no one will stay once they see the real you, hear this carefully. The right people aren't scared of your scars. They're moved by your strength. And if you're the one being trusted with someone else's vulnerability, remember this: staying is the loudest form of love there is. I said, "I'm not going anywhere," and for the first time in her life, she believed it. And maybe, just maybe, that belief is where healing really begins. The second chapter didn't begin with closeness. It began with distance, the kind that sneaks in quietly, pretending to be peace. After that night, after the words, "I'm not going anywhere," settled between us, something shifted inside Amina. Not relief. Not happiness. Something more dangerous: hope. And hope, for someone who has been left too many times, can feel like standing on thin ice while telling yourself it won't crack. She started pulling back in small, almost invisible ways. Replies that used to come instantly now took hours. Plans were met with "maybe" instead of excitement. When we sat together, there were moments when her eyes drifted elsewhere, like she was already preparing for the version of reality where I eventually walked away. It would have been easy to misread it as disinterest. I almost did. But then I remembered the way her hands shook when she lifted her shirt, and I understood, this wasn't her losing interest. This was her protecting herself. One evening, I showed up at her place with takeout she liked but never ordered for herself because she said it was too much. She looked surprised, then guilty, as if kindness always came with a price she couldn't afford. We ate in silence for a while. The kind of silence that isn't awkward, but heavy. Finally, she said, "You don't have to keep doing this." I asked, "Doing what?" She shrugged. "Choosing me." That sentence landed hard. Because no one should feel like they're a burden just for existing. I told her the truth, that choosing her wasn't a task, it was a decision I made every day, the same way she chose to get up and face a body that reminded her of pain. She didn't respond right away. She just nodded, like she was filing the words away for later, unsure whether to trust them. The real conflict came a few weeks later, on a night that was supposed to be simple. We were invited to a friend's gathering. Nothing fancy. Just people, laughter, noise. Halfway through getting ready, she froze. Standing in front of the mirror again, shoulders tense, breath shallow. "I can't go," she said suddenly. I asked why. She didn't answer at first. Then she whispered, "What if someone asks? What if they see me the way I see myself?" That was the first time she cried in front of me. Not quietly. Not gracefully. It was raw, messy, years of bottled fear spilling out all at once. She talked about how she felt broken in rooms full of people. How she felt like everyone else was moving forward while she was stuck explaining her past. How exhausting it was to feel like a before and after photo no one wanted to look at too closely. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't try to fix it. When she finally stopped, I said, "Then we don't go." She looked at me like she hadn't expected that option. "Really?" I nodded. "Your comfort matters more than appearances." And in that moment, something softened in her. Not healed, but loosened, like a knot that had been pulled tight for years. But staying doesn't mean everything is gentle. A few days later, she pushed me away harder than ever. Told me I deserved someone normal. Someone without medical baggage. Someone who didn't flinch at their own reflection. It hurt. Not because I believed her, but because I saw how deeply she believed it herself. I told her I wasn't staying out of pity. That love built on pity collapses fast. I was staying because she was honest, resilient, and real in a world full of people pretending they weren't scared. There was a long pause. Then she asked a question that terrified her more than showing her scars. What if one day you change your mind? I answered honestly. Then that would be my failure, not your flaw. She cried again. Softer this time. Healing didn't come as a breakthrough moment. It came in fragments. In her wearing clothes she used to hide away. In her laughing without checking if it was too loud. In her stopping herself mid-apology and saying, sorry, no, I don't need to apologize for that. And in me learning patience, not the heroic kind, but the quiet kind that stays even when reassurance has to be repeated. The chapter ends not with certainty, but with trust beginning to replace fear. Amina didn't suddenly believe she was easy to love. But she began to believe she wasn't impossible to love. And sometimes, that's the biggest victory of all. Chapter 3 arrived disguised as normal life. No dramatic confession. No sudden crisis. Just days stacking on top of each other, quietly testing whether what we were building could survive outside the safety of late-night honesty and careful words. This was the chapter where love stopped feeling like a promise and started feeling like responsibility. Amina began letting me see parts of her routine she'd kept hidden from everyone else. Doctor appointments she used to attend alone. Medication schedules she never talked about. The way she checked her body in the mirror every morning, not with vanity, but with vigilance, like she was making sure nothing had been taken from her overnight. Watching this taught me something uncomfortable. Loving someone doesn't mean shielding them from pain. It means standing close enough to witness it without turning away. There were days she felt powerful, almost glowing with confidence, joking about her scars like they were footnotes in a long book she'd already finished reading. And then there were days she felt hollow. On those days, everything small felt heavy. A delayed text. A misunderstood tone. A joke that landed wrong. I learned quickly that reassurance wasn't something you give once and move on from, it was something you practice, patiently, even when you're tired. One night, she admitted something she'd never said out loud. I'm scared that if I get better, she said, staring at the ceiling, I won't know who I am anymore. Pain has been my proof that I'm real. That sentence stayed with me. People talk about healing like it's a destination, but for some, pain becomes identity. Letting go of it feels like losing a language you've spoken your whole life. We argued for the first time shortly after. Not about anything big, just plans that fell through. But underneath it was everything unspoken. She accused me of not understanding. I accused her of not letting me try. Voices rose. Silence followed. And for the first time, I wondered if love alone was enough. She didn't answer my calls that night. Old fears crept in, the kind that tell you history is about to repeat itself. But instead of pulling away, I did something different. I waited. Not passively, but intentionally. I gave her space without disappearing. The next morning, she showed up at my door, eyes red, voice steady. I thought pushing you away would hurt less than losing you later, she said. I was wrong. That moment mattered more than any perfect day. Because she didn't run. She came back. And I realized something important: staying isn't about never leaving. It's about returning when fear tells you to vanish. As time passed, her relationship with her body began to shift, not into love, but into acceptance. She stopped covering the scars around me. Not to prove anything. Just because she was tired of hiding. One evening, she traced them absent-mindedly and said, "I used to think these were warnings. Now I think they're chapters." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She was speaking to herself, and that felt like progress. There were setbacks. There always are. Days when she felt unworthy again. Days when I felt helpless. But something fundamental had changed. We weren't fighting the fear alone anymore. We were naming it. Facing it. Letting it exist without letting it decide everything. Near the end of that chapter, we stood together at a small gathering, the kind she used to avoid. She caught my hand in the crowd, not because she was afraid, but because she wanted to. Later, on the way home, she said quietly, "I don't feel invisible anymore." That was when I understood the real resolution wasn't about romance at all. It was about being seen, and choosing not to look away. This chapter closes with no grand declaration. Just a truth that settled gently between us: love doesn't erase scars. It gives them context. And sometimes, that's enough to finally breathe.